Santa Monica Studios recently celebrated their 20th anniversary for God of War, which, first of all, God of War, dang it, that makes me feel old. I played the OG God of War back in high school, and while it doesn't feel like 2 decades ago already, here I am still loving the series 20 years later. Obviously. I and many other gamers acknowledge the God of War franchise as one of the greatest in the history of video games by supporting it with incredibly successful sales figures. And while most games with multiple, if not many sequels tend to just boast newer graphics and get innovatively stale after the 3rd, 4th, 5th, or 23rd version of the game, most people would agree that the mainline God of War sequels have only gotten better as they go on. Like, significantly better. From 2005 to 2013, Santa Monica released 6 games that took place in ancient Greece and interlaced Greek mythology throughout a blood-soaked, vengeance-driven narrative with popcorn-munching, hyper-violent, arcade-style hack-and-slash gameplay that was certifiably stylish and unlike anything on the market at the time. And then, in 2018, Santa Monica basically flipped the script of the titular God of War with a soft reboot of the series that acknowledged the events of the previous 6 titles, but changed its ambiance to the ancient realm of Midgard and now wove Scandinavian mythology throughout this new chapter in the Chronicle of Kratos. On top of the backdrop changing, the developers also reworked the basic structure of the gameplay, which transformed the series from less of a wide-angled, arcade-style platformer where you would smite overwhelming waves of enemies with literal godlike powers overtaking the entirety of the TV screen, and instead transitioned the God of War experience visually into an over-the-shoulder viewpoint that pulls you in for a more personal playthrough, traversing across now Nordic level designs, and only panned out in a fashion similar to the original 6 games to reveal some massive structure or epic creature that would eventually foreshadow where the story was taking you next. The new over-the-shoulder angle, coupled with changing Kratos' voice actor to the bass-boosted Christopher Judge, made the game feel somehow more realistic, grounded, and just downright gritty. But above all else, Santa Monica massively altered the tone of God of War in 2018 by introducing a very new version of Kratos, with a full luxurious beard, and now also a son. And in a parallel fashion to Kratos' fuller, more well-rounded beard, the inclusion of his son Atreus as a traveling companion to the series painted Kratos as a fuller, more well-rounded character. Essentially, I think this shift in tone was the one integral change to the 2018 version of God of War that carried into 2022's God of War Ragnarok that ultimately elevated the entire series to the Mount Olympus of video game franchises. So how did Santa Monica Studios achieve what so many other game devs struggle to do as they dive deeper and deeper into a pool of releasing sequels? Well, I think way more than upgraded visuals, a total redesign of the gameplay, tonal shifts, or the narrative itself. It was quite simply because they made Kratos a dad. How does something as simple as turning Kratos into a papa save the God of War series from mediocrity? Well, if you'll join me here in the deepest depths at the back of my closet, we can explore that topic for my channel's first ever, deeply closeted conversation: how Fatherhood saved the God of War series. I need to start working out.
You'll be fine. I don't want these characters to grow. I don't give a fuck what you're going through at the studio. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. If you're going to build a brand new IP, or you're going to build a character into the God of War lore, and that character is struggling or dealing with your problems that a lot of you guys that have gotten older and girls at the studio have dealt with, that's wonderful. Do that shit all day long. But don't take the character Kratos and go, you know what? I'm older now and I'm really into family and I want to tell stories about fathers and sons and God. No, fuck you. It's just like someone needs to be able to tell these people no sometimes and say, look, we love that you're arty-farty. We love that you're taking shit from your personal life. We love that you're treating the medium, and Sony always has, as an art form as well as a business. You know, we get it, we love it, we support it, but somebody still needs to step up there and go, you need to do all that within the pin that we've put up a fence for you, and if you step outside, the electric shock collar is going to get you. You need to do all that within the pin that says this is what God of War is.
That was David Jaffe. Jaffe? I'm pretty sure it's Jaffe. Anyway, that was the original creator of God of War telling us how he feels about the direction the character of Kratos from the God of War series has gone. You could probably tell from the title of this video that I patently disagree with David Jaffe's opinion that Kratos should not have changed emotionally or developed as a more emotionally empathetic character, and that going outside of the boundary that defines Kratos warrants a shock collar going off. I'd like to get into all the reasons why I disagree with the sentiments for the character of Kratos, and essentially go into any character in an extensive narrative. But before I do, I want to look at what made the original David Jaffe version of Kratos so great to begin with. And for that, we're going to need to take a little trip back in time.
Good call.
It's 2005. A little video sharing company called YouTube was just launched, and it started to compete for my online attention with the likes of E-Bombs World and Newgrounds, 50 Cent's playing nonstop on the radio, the network that called itself Music Television now mostly airs reality TV shows. Hurricane Katrina has ravaged the New Orleans coast and displaced its citizens, and there's an ongoing war in Iraq that still feels vaguely connected to the wave of patriotism that surfaced from the tragedy of 9/11. And here's me in the middle of it all. I had just ridden my bike over to my friend JP's house on one of those fateful days in 2005, when he busted out a demo disc from the revolutionary PlayStation Underground online magazine. He said he hadn't checked out the demo disc yet, but we could both see that it featured some new game called God of War. It sounded dope, so he fired it into his PS2, handed me the controller, and said, "Have at it." I pressed start on the new game option, and it opened up to our titular character standing alone at a precipice overlooking the ocean, claiming,
"The gods of Olympus have abandoned me."
Epic choral tones crescendo to a moment of silence and wind as we look down into a foggy abyss, and with one last moment of reflection, our protagonist casts himself unceremoniously off the edge into oblivion as a lofty narrator expositions how a decade of suffering comes to a close as the sea rushes up to meet our first-person view of our rocky demise. The screen fades to black, and we're presented with the age-old storytelling trope of 3 weeks earlier.
You like that? You want me to cut to 3 weeks earlier when you were alive?
I'm locked in, and my twitchy goblin gamer fingers wrap tight around my controller as my pissed-off sounding character pulls 2 wicked-looking blades out of his ass, and I finally get a chance to see what the actual gameplay is all about. I proceeded to eviscerate the first round of ops with my flame-bound chain blades with some unexpected range, then started spinning around like a roid-raged merry-go-round, launching my hapless opponents into the air, only to bring them in close for a brutal prison-style shankfest, and finally ripping the last enemy in half like I was aggressively trying to collect firewood for Hawkeye's family. The action was frantically paced, but the controls were tight and responsive. And overall, the combat felt more brutally visceral than anything I'd experienced in a video game before. I spent the next 20 minutes tearing through more enemies in a spectacularly bloody fashion, platforming over the dynamic shipwrecked level design, all while being drawn into the ambient stormy backdrop with surprisingly cinematic camera angles that kept the action flowing even while I was doing something as simple as climbing a rope ladder. This all culminated into a boss fight with a 3-headed Hydra that necessitated using the level design to pin 2 of the Hydra's heads to the deck of the ship without totally cutting them off, since we all know how that would go. With the 2 smaller of the 3 heads stun-locked, I climbed the final rope ladder to face the seemingly final phase of the game's first boss fight, and after a resounding Jurassic Park-inspired roar, the demo was over. Needless to say, I was hooked. And I wasn't alone. Over the next 8 years, 6 more iterations of this game would come out, 4 of which I played extensively for the PS2 and PS3, and beat those games several times over, as the harder difficulties unlocked upon their completion. 2 of the other God of War games came out for the PSP, and I never played them because I didn't have a PSP, and I didn't really know anybody that did. But from what I understand, those were basically filler games that took place between the prequel God of War Ascension and the events of the original God of War 1 and 2. Oh, and apparently there was a 2007 mobile version of the game called Betrayal that I didn't even know existed, and I also find kind of wild. I mean, mobile games had barely graduated from running Snake, but sure, let's throw Kratos on your Nokia S60 for a totally lit gaming experience that you can finish in about 2 hours and adds pretty much nothing to the overall narrative of the God of War canon. Still, it's kind of nice to know there was at least a brief moment where mobile games were meant to just be fun and engaging without trying to squeeze every last penny out of you with microtransactions or incentivize you to watch another fever dream of an advertisement for another game, where the ad is absolutely nothing like the actual game itself. Either way, I played the 4 main original titles, and they were all stellar experiences from a gameplay standpoint, and also told a highly entertaining story. By the way, there's tons of spoilers here. If you're planning on playing any of these games, the original trilogy or the new ones, you should probably just skip this entire video and come back when you've played them. To give a very basic overview of God of War pre-2018, Kratos is tricked by Ares, the OG God of War, into killing his wife and child, whose ashes cover his skin and give him the ghostly pallor that he sports to this day as a morbid reminder of his greatest mistake. This sets off a Kill Bill-esque vendetta that starts with killing Ares by the end of the first game, but definitely doesn't stop there. In the original 2005 God of War, Kratos was single-mindedly filled with hatred and rage for the original God of War, Ares, for tricking Kratos into killing his own wife and daughter. After enacting his revenge and killing Ares, Kratos brings peace to the city of Athens, but not himself. Still haunted by the memory of killing his own family, Kratos throws himself off a cliff, but to no avail. The gods find Kratos too useful and have him take Ares' place as, you guessed it, the new god of war. Over the course of God of War 2 and 3, Zeus then betrays Kratos in a soap opera-worthy chain of events. The god of lightning and thunder then reveals himself to be Kratos' father in a classic "guess what, I'm your dad" moment, which quickly devolves into Zeus running Kratos through with a massive blade of Olympus, giving Kratos an impressive scar and enough daddy issues to fuel another vengeance-filled blood orgy, murdering his way through nearly every Greek god foolish enough to pose our boy Kratos, the legendary ghost of Sparta. And there was something extremely satisfying about figuratively and literally dismantling the entirety of the Greek pantheon by gratuitously murdering every god all the way up to Zeus himself, in an Oedipal fashion that felt poetically justified by the end of Kratos' blood-soaked journey. Chronologically, God of War Ascension came out after God of War 3 in 2013, but canonically it served as a prequel to the first God of War. Ascension then helped flesh out some of the emotional canvas of Kratos by filling in some more characterization for the wife and child that Kratos mistakenly killed, and at the same time made them feel more like people as opposed to a cliched reason to go on a vengeful murder rampage. However, Ascension also didn't feel all that necessary, and the addition of the prequel started to feel more like the same tired and true formula that was actually lacking some fan-favorite features like a rage meter and skimped on previously established epic boss fights and just didn't take any risks other than adding multiplayer, which was kind of a fun addition, but not enough to feel like it added much to the God of War collection overall. Generally speaking, all the God of War games before the reboot in 2018 were tied together with a common theme: revenge. Bloody, violent, bone-breaking, head-tearing revenge. And in the process, the character of Kratos got kind of pigeonholed as a bit of a two-dimensional character that was only motivated by revenge, and would brutally murder anyone who stood in his way, whether it be in opposition to him or just literally physically in his way and slowing him down. Looking back on these games, I realized there were many occasions where Kratos kills innocent people, and cruelly so for seemingly no reason. I get making the character of Kratos a tough badass that doesn't compromise or have patience for diplomacy, but most of these killings in retrospect seem pointless and just make him less likable as a character that I want to play. And I'm not going to pretend that the gratuitous violence of a game like this didn't tickle my goopy goblin gamer brain, but by the end of God of War 3, the series just felt like it was fun for the sake of being fun, and that was it. If anything, I feel like the character of Kratos from the original trilogy tells a tragic story of a person that's haunted by their past mistakes and only wants to inflict as much pain and agony on any and all of the individuals that are both directly and indirectly leading him down this path of violence. The final resolution of killing everyone involved in his trauma leaves Kratos atop a throne of corpses in one final act of defiance against the ghost of Athena. He then takes his own life and impales himself yet again with the blade of Olympus. The conclusion of the trilogy was bleak, to say the least, and it bookended the series as this grim story that felt like the only way for Kratos to set things right was to take his own life, on more than one occasion too. This ultimately painted the protagonist of the series as an unredeemable anti-hero, hell-bent on murder and suicide to solve his own problems. Again, the games were fun, gratuitously fun, for Kratos' journey of revenge. But thematically, the resolution was dark as hell itself, and it felt like a bit of a head-scratcher by the end of it, like, okay, what was the point of that? And maybe that is a good lesson in violence begetting violence, and that there's nothing redeeming about pursuing that endless cycle. Or maybe it was just a bold decision to leave us with an unhappy ending to a narrative because that's the bleak reality of achieving massive societal changes for very personal reasons. Either way, I think the ending of the original trilogy serves as a fantastic foundation for the broken character of Kratos to evolve into something more. But for that, he would first need time to heal his wounds, both physical and mental. 5 years after I had rolled credits on what I thought would be the last God of War game I would ever play, I remember being surprised to see that Santa Monica Studios was going to soft reboot the series in a Game Informer magazine article. Which, by the way, why was it almost impossible to get a physical magazine print copy of Game Informer at that point? I can't be the only dinosaur that liked having a few copies of these stacked on the back of my toilet for the times I forgot to bring my phone with me. Seriously, it felt like at a certain point GameStop was gatekeeping the keys to the Game Informer magazine kingdom every time I needed to renew a subscription. GameStop employees kept trying to push the digital copy of Game Informer on me like it was so much better, and I have to pull off a fucking Jedi mind trick to just get them to renew my magazine print subscription. I got so tired of having that conversation that I actually tried looking it up on my own on Game Informer's website, thinking it would be easier. But no, even Game Informer would have a link on their own website that said, "Click to order magazine subscription," which would then take you to another page that prompted you to upgrade with Premium, and wouldn't you know it, Premium is just a digital copy. I, and I'm sure a lot of other people, would have paid double for a tangible copy of these magazines to consume on a monthly basis, keep around as collector's items, or, like me, just have a physical copy of something video game related to thumb through while I was taking a dump. I digress. Anyway, I remember seeing this article in a Game Informer circa 2017, and I remember thinking to myself, do we really need another God of War? Santa Monica Studios seemed to have wrapped up Kratos' vengeance neatly in God of War 3, pushed a prequel that was decent but felt unnecessary, and put out 2 PS2 exclusives that nobody played. But this Game Informer article mentioned that there were going to be some major changes to the style of gameplay that would slow the action down and make the combat feel more grounded, with Kratos now wielding a two-handed Leviathan axe instead of his iconic chain blades, and that this new iteration of God of War would have Kratos taking on the gods of Norse mythology instead of Greek, since, basically he'd killed all of them at this point. The proposed changes to the combat sounded intriguing, and I've always thought Norse mythology was tight, so combined with the fact that I was a massive fan of the franchise already, I didn't think too hard about getting my hands on a copy when it eventually came out in April 2018. And I mean to say, got my hands on a copy, because this was one of the last games that I went to a brick-and-mortar GameStop for, and bought an actual physical copy of a game. So, as I placed my grubby gamer paws on that brand new shrink-wrapped hard plastic case, I saw the cover art featured Kratos in a small boat with a heroically posed young boy in front of him, and quickly inferred that this child was supposed to be his son. I had actually just had a son myself at the end of March in 2017, so being a new father, I had been basically under a rock as far as video game news went, and this was the first time I'd heard anything about Kratos having a kid join him in this new soft reboot of the series. Just like myself, Kratos was now a dad, and oh
Boy.
was that a game changer. In fact, I think this is kind of the main point of this video. Kratos being a daddy was such a game changer that I think highlighting Kratos' journey with fatherhood is the one critical element that saved the whole franchise from monotony, and elevated the whole God of War saga into a modern-day masterpiece. Let me explain. Canonically, it had been anywhere from 150 years to several hundred years since the events of God of War 3, and with the weathering of time, we're introduced to a very different Kratos. Within the first 10 minutes of 2018's God of War, we observe Kratos sporting a fuller and more well-rounded facial hair, and he's chopping a tree down. A tree meant for the pyre of his recently deceased wife, and mother of his newly introduced child to the God of War series. This intro in and of itself was significantly slowed down in comparison to the older titles, which threw you almost instantly and straight away into some bloody action. And with this juxtaposition, we could clearly see that this new Kratos was quickly being painted as more of a stoic father figure, as opposed to a sadistic murder machine. Throughout the rest of 2018's God of War, as well as 2022's Ragnarok, Kratos fleshes out as more of a level-headed father figure for this new son Atreus, and he's chock full of inspirational quotes. I mean, just listen to one of the many golden nuggets of inspiration that Kratos has for his son here.
Atreus, you are getting better. Faster.
I'd even be better than you one day, huh?
If you are not, I have failed.
I'm a father to 3 kids, and if anything, I want to strive to be as inspiring to my own kids as some of these quotes. On one hand, I can understand being mad at Santa Monica Studio for drastically changing the personality of Kratos.
Fuck you!
But even still, I can't fathom being mad at the direction that they took it if I was David Jaffe. Personally, I'm a little astounded that Jaffe, the man who came up with the original character, feels this way, when from what I understand, I'm pretty sure he's the father himself. It's pure speculation on my part, but my gut reaction to this response is that Jaffe left any involvement with the games in 2007 after God of War 2, and seeing the character develop in a creative way that wasn't his idea just left him resentful, strictly due to the fact that it wasn't his idea, under his control, and or probably just that he's not getting paid to work on the projects anymore. But it's also got me wondering what the game would actually look like if Jaffe was still involved with the franchise in 2017 for the reboot. Part of me thinks it would be fun to have rebooted the series with the same tone of the original trilogy, and how that would have turned out, with the same old Kratos that Jaffe originally envisioned. Even if he still had a son in this reboot with this hypothetical version, he would have been treating him more like Omni-Man treats Invincible, in that a child can't begin to comprehend their immortality in comparison to the mortal lives around them. In this version, any of the more human elements would be seen through Atreus' eyes, and Kratos could be this sort of antagonistic inevitability of emotions getting sanded off by the reality that everyone that they will meet will be gone in the blink of their lifetime, while they instead will endure foreseeably for thousands of years. If this was the case, Kratos could have maintained his badass and violent nature, more along the lines of the Doom guy from the Doom series, just a brutal force of nature that fights the evil forces against him by getting even nastier than they are. Because I think that nasty violence is the common thread that ties all entertaining action franchises together. Whether it's a video game, a movie, a comic, or really even a book. Violence, for the sake of violence, has been undeniably a source of entertainment for humans for thousands of years.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
And no matter what a storyteller's obstacle is, violence is the easiest solution to a problem.
You put that whore on her back and you shank her. You know how to make a shiv?
What?
And while that bloody, violent revenge serves as a satisfying bookend from a viewer's standpoint, it also can't solve Kratos' core issues. No amount of bloody revenge murder can undo the traumatic damage that was done to Kratos from being tricked into killing his own family. At the end of the very first God of War, all Kratos wants to do is forget what he's done. Over the course of God of War 2 and 3, he doesn't just metaphorically push those memories away of his family, he actually even literally physically pushes the memory of his daughter away in Chains of Olympus, in one of the most hilarious uses of QTE in video game history. When killing gods, or anyone that opposes him, or is just unfortunate enough to be in his way to solve his problems isn't enough, he even kills himself at the end of the original God of War. As well as God of War 3. And if you do the math on it, Kratos was actually killed 3 times by other individuals, on top of trying to attempt to kill himself twice. The central theme of the series before the reboot in 2018, to me, boils down to, if you have a problem with someone, kill him. And if that doesn't work, kill yourself. And that's fucking dark. Ultimately, I don't think it would have served the studio to have kept the same old Kratos for the reboot. I think this mentality of keeping an old formula is what plagues any long-running series in general, in that there's no growth. When characters from TV shows never evolve or change, even if the writing is great, most audiences tend to get tired of new seasons in a long-running series and look back more fondly on earlier seasons or a golden era of a certain time period of the entire series.
You're wasting your time!
I think when storytellers evolve and grow their characters, it leads to a much more meaningful narrative that has to have a natural end as opposed to milking a tired formula until it becomes stale and predictable for the audience. That's not to say that too many changes can't ruin a series as well, if those changes aren't just meant to subvert expectations without bringing a logical conclusion to the overarching narrative. Ultimately, I think it's a much more realistic and beautiful approach that Santa Monica Studio took. Portraying a severely broken character like Kratos to still be healing after hundreds of years from his past mistakes, and fumbling his way through fatherhood by himself in a precarious balancing act of preparing his son for the inevitability of violent conflict, while also attempting to guide his son Atreus from making the same mistakes he did. I'm still slowly actually working my way through Ragnarok currently, and I've been taking my time on purpose, I think. Being a father of 3 small kids doesn't create a ton of opportunities to play games in the first place, but I think more than that, I just don't want it to be over. I've spent 25 years of my own life with this character, and knowing that there's a conclusive end around the corner makes me want to soak in as much of this most recent chapter in the God of War saga. There's rumors that another chapter of God of War will be released in the near future, and possibly surrounding Egyptian mythology, which will probably be super rad. But if anything, these last 2 games have got me hopeful that there are more changes in God of War's character development, and it won't be for the worse. That's about it. Thanks for watching. This is kind of a new format for me. If you liked it, like the video or something, smash that subscribe button, whatever the YouTubers usually say. I've got to go back to being a dad myself and probably go make some grilled cheeses for lunch. See y'all. Thanks for watching again.